Leo Tolstoy had reached the very pinnacle of success. Celebrated across Europe, revered as one of the greatest novelists who ever lived, the author of immortal classics like War and Peace and Anna Karenina, seemed to possess everything one could desire. His wealth was abundant, his home lavish, and his family life rich with affection and warmth. Yet beneath this facade of extraordinary achievement, Tolstoy grappled with a troubling and persistent emptiness, a secret despair he confessed privately. Is there any meaning in my life that will not be annihilated by my inevitable death? At nearly 50 years of age, at the moment when he had seemingly everything to live for, this terrifying realization gripped him with relentless power. What will become of everything I've achieved? He asked himself privately. Will it matter at all when I'm gone? These haunting questions gnawed away at his spirit, casting shadows even on the simplest joys of daily life. Though outwardly he remained the picture of success, admired, respected, beloved deep inside, Tolstoy had become profoundly disillusioned. Privately, in the late hours, he found himself staring into the abyss of an unbearable void, confronted by the stark truth of mortality. Is there any meaning in my life that will not be annihilated by my inevitable death? The paradox of Tolstoy's glittering yet hollow existence set the stage for one of history's greatest personal journeys, as he desperately began searching for answers to escape the dark emptiness inside. Born into Russian nobility in 1828, Tolstoy's life was one marked by contradiction from the very beginning. His youth was characterized by privilege, but within him dwelled conflicting forces constantly at war. As a young nobleman, he pursued pleasure openly. He gambled, drank, and chased romantic adventures with carefree abandon. Yet privately, Tolstoy harbored a deep, earnest desire for moral perfection. He rigorously chronicled his moral struggles in detailed diaries, relentlessly judging himself for every indulgence and weakness. This intense moral introspection became the hidden undercurrent that would shape his later questions about life's purpose. Even as he experienced the thrill of military glory, fighting bravely in the Crimean War, Tolstoy quietly questioned the morality of violence and the vanity of honor. His literary brilliance reflected this same duality. Characters like Levin in Anna Karenina subtly revealed Tolstoy's own inner turmoil. Men haunted by dissatisfaction with worldly achievements, endlessly seeking a deeper, lasting meaning. As he entered middle age, these contradictions grew sharper. Despite a loving marriage to his wife Sophia and the lively companionship of their numerous children, Tolstoy began privately to sense a disturbing hollowness in his success. Letters from this period reveal a creeping dissatisfaction. Accolades no longer held meaning, prestige felt empty, and wealth provided no lasting comfort. These quiet moments of doubt foreshadowed the coming storm of existential crisis. Tolstoy's outwardly enviable life was secretly becoming unbearable, his soul whispering urgently that beneath the polished surface lay unanswered questions that could no longer be ignored. As Tolstoy approached 50, the fragile balance he had maintained between outward success and inner turmoil suddenly shattered. Without warning, the questions that had quietly haunted him erupted violently to the surface, plunging him into a devastating existential crisis. Despite possessing every advantage, wealth, fame, a respected literary reputation, and a loving family, Tolstoy was consumed by an unbearable dread. Every morning he awoke to the same relentless thought. What is the purpose of doing anything at all, if eventually I shall be forgotten, and everything I value will turn to dust? His diary entries from this period reveal a stark reality. The question of suicide came upon me when I was completely happy, and it seemed utterly logical, even inevitable. His life rapidly descended into an agonizing internal nightmare. Activities he once cherished, such as writing and family gatherings, now seemed meaningless and empty. Pleasure lost its sweetness, work appeared futile. The tormenting thought of death overshadowed every joy, making existence seem utterly absurd. At times, Tolstoy was driven so close to the edge that he stopped hunting altogether, terrified that in a moment of weakness he might impulsively end his own life. Each day became a silent battle between reason, urging him to surrender to despair, and an indefinable impulse within him, quietly resisting the ultimate act of self-destruction. Tolstoy, once a figure of strength and confidence, now found himself paralyzed by dread, imprisoned within his own mind. In letters he confessed the profound depth of this despair, admitting he took refuge only in sleep, where unconsciousness offered temporary relief from waking torment. Even dreams became preferable to the painful absurdity of daily existence. The greatest novelist of his age, adored by thousands, could find no refuge in wealth, success, or fame. His profound existential agony had reduced everything around him to hollow meaninglessness. Desperately seeking a way forward, Tolstoy began to question whether any answer existed, one powerful enough to illuminate his dark and relentless inner void. Desperate for relief, Tolstoy embarked on an intense intellectual quest. Convinced the wisdom of humanity's greatest thinkers must surely contain the answer he urgently needed. He immersed himself deeply into philosophy, passionately exploring the thoughts of Socrates, Solomon, Buddha, and modern philosophers such as Schopenhauer and Mainlander. Yet instead of providing comfort, philosophy revealed unsettling conclusions. Socrates and Solomon taught him life's vanity and transience. Buddha instructed him to renounce worldly attachments altogether, suggesting existence was an illusion rather than a meaningful reality. Schopenhauer and Mainlander were even more troubling, presenting life itself as suffering and advocating non-existence as preferable to the pain and futility of human existence. To Tolstoy's growing horror, the collective wisdom of humanity seemed unified in its bleakness, suggesting happiness belonged only to those who had never been born. Philosophy, instead of offering liberation, deepened Tolstoy's despair. Its intellectual clarity offered no genuine escape from meaninglessness. Rather, it intensified his fear by rationally reinforcing what his heart already dreaded, that life had no intrinsic purpose. Disillusioned with philosophical inquiry, Tolstoy turned hopefully towards science, certain that empirical knowledge could illuminate life's mysteries where philosophy had failed. He pored over scientific writings, particularly Darwin's theory of evolution and contemporary scientific materialism. Yet this too offered him no comfort. Science accurately explained the intricate mechanics of human existence, depicting life as nothing more than random biological occurrences, brief chemical processes destined inevitably to extinguish. The scientific worldview described existence as a cold, indifferent accident devoid of higher purpose or meaning. This realization plunged Tolstoy deeper into despair, forcing him to face a harrowing conclusion. If reason alone dictated truth, then the most logical act would be suicide, an immediate end to the intolerable absurdity of living without purpose. Yet despite reason's harsh verdict, a profound instinct within him vehemently refused this outcome. Tolstoy felt an inexplicable resistance, a quiet but persistent voice insisting that reason alone could not define existence fully. Somewhere beyond rational analysis, he sensed another dimension of understanding existed, one that transcended intellect, logic, and despair. This mysterious inner voice, soft yet unwavering, urged him to continue his search, hinting at the possibility of hope and meaning beyond the limitations of philosophy and science. With philosophy and science offering him no solace, Tolstoy began meticulously observing how others around him grappled with life's fundamental emptiness, carefully analyzing each response in search of hope. His sharp perception identified 4 distinct paths people typically chose to navigate the void that haunted him. The first approach he observed was deliberate ignorance, those who simply refused to acknowledge life's painful questions, comfortably immersing themselves in trivial pursuits and everyday routines. Tolstoy noted with frustration that countless individuals around him seemed content in their ignorance, never disturbed by existential dread because they never questioned life's purpose in the first place. Yet for Tolstoy himself, ignorance was an impossible option. His mind had already opened to the unsettling truth of existence, and it could not simply shut again. Next, he considered the path of pleasure-seeking, the Epicurean escape that he himself had once enthusiastically embraced. Tolstoy recognized clearly that countless others attempted to mask life's emptiness through endless indulgence in luxury, status, and sensory gratification. Yet from bitter experience he understood that pleasure offered only temporary relief, a brief sweetness soon overwhelmed again by the hollow awareness of futility. He vividly compared this escape to the man trapped in a well, desperately licking honey from a branch, savouring sweetness briefly, even as death inevitably loomed above and below. Pleasure, Tolstoy concluded definitively, was merely an illusion, a momentary distraction from a profound emptiness that always returned. More troublingly, Tolstoy confronted the third path, despair and suicide. This was the path of those who, overwhelmed by the absurdity of life, saw death as the only logical solution. Having come dangerously close to this himself, he understood its dark allure deeply. Rationally speaking, suicide appeared logical, yet Tolstoy found himself instinctively repelled by it. He eventually realized that suicide offered no genuine solution, only a stark termination of questioning, not an answer. By extinguishing existence, one merely removed the questioner without resolving the fundamental issue of meaning itself. This haunting insight gave Tolstoy pause, prompting a deeper, more courageous exploration. Finally, Tolstoy identified perhaps the most painful and tragic response of all: apathetic resignation, a state of spiritual paralysis where people recognized life's absurdity but lacked the courage either to embrace life fully or to reject it. He observed this apathetic limbo in many who drifted quietly through existence, neither truly alive nor bravely confronting despair, merely enduring until death freed them. Tolstoy found this option utterly unbearable, a soul-destroying paralysis that defied his very nature as a man determined to understand life's deepest truths. Simply existing passively, surrendered to hopelessness, felt to him like the ultimate betrayal of life itself. After careful reflection, Tolstoy conclusively rejected each of these 4 responses. Ignorance was impossible, pleasure fleeting, suicide unacceptable, and apathy intolerable. None provided the genuine peace or enduring meaning he so desperately sought. Yet by meticulously examining and then dismissing each of these routes, Tolstoy moved closer toward recognizing the one pathway he had not yet thoroughly explored, a possibility still hidden within his grasp, waiting patiently for discovery. At his lowest point, just when all hope appeared lost, Tolstoy encountered an extraordinary revelation, one that emerged unexpectedly from an unlikely source. He began to notice something extraordinary among the peasants and labourers who surrounded his estate. Though their lives were harsh, difficult, and seemingly unenviable, these humble individuals possessed a resilience and contentment entirely absent from his own privileged existence. Intrigued, Tolstoy asked himself, what is it these simple, hard-working people know that I, with all my education and privilege, have completely overlooked? Observing them closely, he recognized the astonishing source of their serenity, their unshakable faith in something greater than themselves. Their lives, though filled with hardship, were sustained by genuine belief, a simple and profound trust in a higher purpose and an infinite existence that transcended earthly struggles. Tolstoy realized with profound awe that this faith was not merely blind adherence to doctrine, but a powerful, heartfelt conviction that life held a deeper meaning, a connection to something infinite, something eternal, something far greater than individual existence itself. This revelation struck Tolstoy with tremendous force, transforming his understanding of life's purpose. For the first time, he recognized that faith provided what neither reason, philosophy, nor science could deliver, a genuine sense of meaning and enduring peace. Faith, he concluded, was not intellectual defeat or irrational escape, but rather a profound affirmation of life's intrinsic value, grounded in love, compassion, and humility. Tolstoy himself expressed this idea beautifully, stating, "Faith is the force of life. Without faith, life is impossible." Importantly, Tolstoy's faith was distinctly personal and deeply practical, separate from organized religion, which he saw as corrupted by worldly ambition. He chose instead to embody spirituality through concrete action, radically transforming his lifestyle. Rejecting his aristocratic privileges, Tolstoy deliberately embraced poverty and simplicity, dressed plainly, shared generously with those in need, and worked alongside peasants in the fields. He dedicated himself entirely to spreading the ideals of love, compassion, humility, and nonviolence, realizing through direct experience that a meaningful life emerges not from intellectual pride or material luxury, but from serving others. This radical shift in Tolstoy's beliefs and actions delivered him from existential despair. The terror of meaninglessness vanished, replaced by profound inner peace, a peace born from understanding his life's significance in the context of something eternal and infinite. Tolstoy, the once tortured genius who had wrestled endlessly with life's most daunting questions, had finally found the clarity he sought. Through the discovery of genuine faith and humble service, he had uncovered an answer to life's deepest mystery, a truth that would inspire generations, illuminating the darkness not only for himself, but for all who would come after him, seeking meaning in their own lives. Tolstoy's transformation from existential despair to profound spiritual fulfillment did not simply end with personal enlightenment. It became a luminous legacy that echoed across generations, transcending cultures and continents. In the final decades of his life, Tolstoy fully committed himself to embodying his newfound beliefs. He renounced his wealth and privileges, deliberately choosing the simplicity and hardship of peasant life. In this radical decision, he lived out precisely the wisdom he had uncovered. The truest meaning of life lay not in worldly achievements, but in humble service to humanity. Writing tirelessly, teaching compassion, advocating social justice, and speaking courageously against violence, Tolstoy sought to demonstrate, through his own existence, that genuine peace and purpose were attainable for anyone willing to embrace humility and compassion. His powerful message rippled outward, inspiring global leaders who would reshape the world through non-violence and moral conviction. But among those profoundly impacted was Mahatma Gandhi, who drew directly from Tolstoy's writings on non-violent resistance, openly crediting the Russian philosopher as a pivotal influence in his historic struggle against colonial oppression. Decades later, Martin Luther King Jr., deeply influenced by Gandhi's methods of peaceful resistance, further amplified Tolstoy's ideals through his historic fight for civil rights in America. Thus, Tolstoy's quiet realization that faith, humility, and service are the only paths to true meaning would indirectly guide some of history's most transformative movements. Yet perhaps Tolstoy's greatest legacy lies not merely in his wide-reaching influence, but in the honest vulnerability of his journey. He bravely confronted the questions most fear to ask, exploring each possible answer with unflinching sincerity. Tolstoy had not simply theorized about life's meaning. He had courageously lived the question itself, rejecting intellectual pride, material comforts, and false escapes to discover a truth deeply authentic and universally resonant. He succinctly articulated this wisdom, writing, "The sole meaning of life is to serve humanity," a belief he had earned through personal struggle, profound reflection, and practical commitment. Today, Tolstoy's wisdom continues to hold profound relevance. In a world frequently overwhelmed by confusion, anxiety, and a relentless quest for meaning, his journey invites us to pause and reflect on our own lives, prompting us gently yet insistently to ask ourselves the same difficult questions he once faced. If someone as intelligent, talented, and privileged as Tolstoy discovered life's ultimate meaning not through intellectual inquiry alone, but through spiritual humility and service to others, what does this profound insight suggest for us? Tolstoy's journey teaches us that life's meaning is not an intellectual puzzle waiting to be solved, nor a pleasure to be consumed, nor a despair from which we must escape, but a reality to be embraced wholeheartedly. It emerges clearly and profoundly when we choose to live not merely for ourselves, but for something far greater than our limited individual existence. Tolstoy himself put it best when he declared, "Faith is the force of life. Without faith, life is impossible." This insight invites each of us to contemplate our own existence with honesty and courage, challenging us to ask not only what we live for, but why. Leo Tolstoy faced the void, wrestled with despair, and emerged victorious with a message of enduring hope. He found his answer, lived it passionately, and left it behind as a roadmap for all who follow. Now his wisdom calls to us to reflect deeply, to embrace humility, to serve others generously, and perhaps to discover our own profound meaning by connecting our finite lives to something greater and eternal. Tolstoy's legacy is clear. Meaning is real, accessible, and waiting patiently for every heart willing to seek it with sincerity and compassion.